Welcome back, students. So, we are going to continue our discussion on some selected poems of Robert Frost. I have already discussed the poem, the first poem, The Road Not Taken, with you in the last video, and today we are going to cover two other poems, Stopping by Words on a Snowy Eve and A Tuffet of Flowers. Let's start our discussion. Okay, the poem we are going to discuss today is Stopping by Words on a Snowy Eve. Well, the poem shows a traveler walking on a road where he's coming back from his daily activities, and it's a time of evening. He is witnessing the scene of rainfall in the not the rainfall, but snowfall in the mid of the night in a forest where he finds everything covered with snow, and the sight was so beautiful that it had just taken the poet in its trance. So in that very trance of enjoying the moment of natural beauty, he had just composed this poem. So this is the overall scenario of this poem. But in the end of this poem, suddenly he came back to the real world. I mean, he came back to the reality of the world, that he is not the part of the scene, and he has to move back, as he has duties to keep and miles to go before he sleeps. This is a modernist feature. So there is a speciality of Robert Frost, that when we go through his poems, we can find the themes that are very similar to romantic poetry, means highly imaginative themes, but his treatment with his themes of nature are quite it is quite realistic. So we can find the traces of romanticism as well as modernism in the poetry of Robert Frost. Loving nature, spending time with nature, he wants that, but on the other hand, he knows that he has duties to fulfill in order to keep moving in his real life smoothly. So this is overall a major debate of Robert Frost poetry. So today we are going to discuss Stopping by Words on a Snowy Eve. The traveler appears worried that he is committing an offense by looking upon words owned by another man. Nevertheless, he steals a look, for the other man will not see me stopping here. Now, in the first stanza, when he was in trance of that scene, that scenery, he stopped over there, but he has a fear. Now this fear is a modernist feature, because he's afraid of the rare honor of the forest, of that beautiful sight. So that's why he wants to enjoy the beauty, but he is also afraid of the reaction of the real honor. He was astonished by the stunning beauty of the sight of the snowy night. In stanza 2, the stanza says that the location is remote, means it's somehow some village area, a remote area, some forest. The weather has been cold enough to freeze a lake, and that the evening is the darkest of the year. However, the horse probably thinks it odd that his master has stopped between the words and lake on a dark evening. Now the horse is also used as a symbol of reality, as a symbol of real life responsibilities in this very poem. This observation suggests that the darkness is external only, where the speaker is using the word darkest to explain the horse reaction. Then in stanza 3, sounds are important in the stanza, namely the sounds of the bells, the wind, and the snowflakes. All these things, on one hand, some of the elements are representing nature, but on the other hand, the shaking of the horse and ringing of the bells. It is showing the calls of real life, the calls for duties. All of the sounds are gentle, contrasting with cacophony of everyday life in a town. Now, in stanza 4, the traveler would like to stay a while and perhaps even enter the woods to absorb their ambience and ponder the mystery of life and nature. However, he has obligations and responsibilities and he's well aware of them. Therefore, he decides to move on, but the poem doesn't say whether he in fact moves on or not. One presumes that he does after realizing that he has duties to keep and miles to go before I sleep. So the major theme of this poem that you will find working in it is the theme of duty versus desire. And secondly, if we just analyze this poem in a bit philosophical way, then we can find that in this very poem you can find the theme of life and death as well. I mean, you want to live a life of your choice, and as long as you want to live, but you should have a very clear idea that this is a mortal life and you have to die one day, and you have to move from that scene, and the scenic beauty and everything that is beautiful in this world that will be vanished from your eyes. So this can be one of the possible theme as well. Well, the visible sign of the poet's preoccupation, the word is not too strong, is the recurrent image. On one hand, a romantic inspiration of the solitude and beauty of the site, but a constant intervention of the real world. So here we can find a beautiful blend of romantic and modernist features in his poetry. There is an element of desire versus duty in the poem. As I have already told you, a world offering perfect quiet and solitude exists side by side with the realization that there is also another world, a world of people and social obligations. So this is somehow a very brief explanation of whatever is conveyed through the poem. Both words have claims on the poet. He stops by woods on this darkest evening of the year to watch them. The poet is put in mind of the promises he has to keep, of the miles he still must travel. We are not told, however, that the call of social responsibility proves stronger than the attraction of the woods, but both of these things are going in parallel in this poem. The craftiness of the poet is evident in his description of both of these moods in parallel in this poem. What appears to be simple is shown to be not really simple. What appears to be innocent, not really innocent. The poet is fascinated and lulled by the empty ways of white and black. So this is all about the poem. Here's a possible conclusion: that stopping by woods on a snowy eve stages its play of opposite at typical Frostian borders between night and day, storm and hearth, nature and culture, individual and group, freedom and responsibility. So one thing we can just find or explore in Frostian poetry is that we can find Frost emphasizing or using or playing beautifully with what we say binary opposition. So he intensifies the meanings of his poem by using two moods going in parallel, like two oppositional moods going in parallel. So this is very much near to the binary opposition. While loving both of the words and moving on with both of them is complementary according to Robert Frost's perspective. That's why we say that although he chooses his themes from romantic life or romanticism or imaginative side, but actually his treatment with his poems or themes is realistic and modernist. This is somehow a modernist side of his work. Well, the next thing is a brook in the city. This is the whole stanza of this short poem. Um, there is a possible explanation that the poem is about how a man is observing a horse in the city that has um, a address number and is built on a paved road. He means he's talking about a house. Sorry, I was just going through. I was saying horse. It isn't horse, but it's house. He's portraying a description of a house. He remembers from his past how the house was a farmhouse next to a brook in the city. He used to play in the brook and feels nostalgic. He resents that the brook was destroyed and paved over. A thematic statement of this poem is this: when rural areas are developed into urban ones, the consequences may not be positive. So, on one hand, we can find that he is feeling a little bit of unrest due to the emerging industrialization and urbanization. This theme is developed throughout the poem and by characterization. One, the author or poet describes how simple and blissful life was in the days of the rural Brook. It is also developed by the settings. When the author describes the negative aspects of the new settings, like when he describes the seaward, Dungian undertone, these things make the reader infer that the narrator doesn't appreciate the city as much and doesn't advocate urbanization. So actually, he is in favor of rustic life, rural life, and he considers it near to nature and simple life. Here's a list of the critical receptions: industrial aftermaths, or the aftermaths of industrialization, lack of moderation and modesty in human lives, materialism, decrease of values, symbolically, man running away from nature, running away from the core of life, exploitation of nature, ruling tactics, deprivation of nature's right to flourish. Paradoxically, man is killing himself, decreasing his own possibilities of living.